And not only that, it also puts you out there for the feeders.
True, but, people like me are out there no matter what. A lot of my experiences, the people that I've talked to who've had this happen to them. Let me answer the original question is, what is it? How do you observe it? To give people a basic idea of what it is that, you see, the human being is a person who has a choice to make in their life about whether they motivate by their own energy or by the energy of somebody else. It's like Shakespeare has said, like monsters from the deep, the human beings prey upon one another. The Christ in the Gospel of Thomas, in the Bible, they've all spoken about it. We have to diagnose it because there is this pernicious thing going on. It's just that we have not, sharpened our intuition to notice that it's going on. There's no meter, no electronic gadget that you can pull out and say, oh, look, this person is, taking my life force or taking my energy. And because that scientific device does not exist, psychic vampires are there able to basically flourish because it's very, very hard to accuse them. It's like I was saying in the Origins of Evil talk and in the Future of Mankind talk. Unfortunately, there is no police that you can go to, and there's no judge that you can go to, and there's no court that you can go to when psychic violence is being done to you. In fact, you may not even know that it's being done. A child who's grown up, say, in an abusive family where the parents are completely violating that child's rights and are even physically or in any other way abusing that child, you see, that child doesn't know any other reality. And it might grow up thinking that a lot of that is completely normal and then even go on to repeat the behavior because it's literally not understood in its mind that is completely off the wall, abnormal behavior that doesn't go on elsewhere. So there's a critical issue where we're not even educated, George. We're not even aware of some of the violence that we, do to others. Now, the most important thing, though, is the violence that we do to ourselves, which can be called masochism or sadism to the self. There is a whole form of unseen emotional violence, psychic violence, that is done in the human race, and a great deal of it is done from one person to the other. This is what chiefly interests me. But then I started to notice that there is a lot of this emotional violence that goes on, and because if you kill somebody, you will be hunted, you will be caught, and you will be accountable, and you may spend the rest of your life in jail. But yet, we do infinitely worse crimes to people. We destroy their emotions. We can actually try to murder their soul. This goes on in life, more than we'd want to even imagine. Basically, drop atom bombs on people's emotions. We conspire to do things that, suck their energy and drive them mad and take away their hope and all of these psychic things. And yet the human race is not even aware that this is violence. It just takes it for granted because, again, our eyes have not been opened. So to me, it's absolutely critical that human beings start to open their ideas to this kind of psychic tyranny, this kind of sadism to the self, and then from that move on to understand more about the kind of violence that we perpetrate on people, which may not be illegal in the, quote-unquote sense of the word, the obvious sense of the word. It's not going to happen overnight. This is I'm hoping to kickstart this information, this knowledge, so that, the human race does start to get savvy about this, because physical violence, criminal violence, is not the only kind of violence that's going on in this world.
That's for sure. To me, what it's all about is the awareness of self, and through that, all these things can become known to us. If you don't believe that somebody can hurt you psychically, can they?
They can hurt you whether you believe it or not.
Exactly.
They can hurt you even if you are aware of it.
Yeah.
I have heard of cases in which people who are in the spiritual community and who know how to cleanse themselves, very deeply, who know how to change their energy, cleanse themselves, they're still under attack. Maybe not as bad, but how can you avoid it? It's like somebody going out into the streets and walking downtown and expecting that you're not going to inhale the fumes, or get the dust on you. What we've got to understand is this is a natural phenomenon. As long as people are in the kind of pathetic, inauthentic, and low chakra state that they're in, full of envy, and envy is different than jealousy, full of anger, full of repressed, content, you better believe that you're going to be walking in a sea of their energy out there. So just like we know that there's weather, and you have to protect against the weather, the human race needs to learn what are the keys, what are the ways of finding out about this. I said earlier that it's difficult to identify one, and all I meant by that is that each individual case is kind of different, because each individual is different.
Exactly, yeah.
Each person is different, and therefore their particular kind of interaction with a psychic vampire is going to be different, because it's all based on your own profile. And the vampire, these are usually very cunning people. They modify their behavior based on each situation. Say there is this hypothetical vampire that you know at work, well, that person isn't going to operate the same way with you as there are for the person in the next office or the people they know at home or their neighbors. They got a different face for everybody. So what I can provide is a general philosophy of this subject. And then it's up to the person to, in all good feeling and in the right way to sort of utilize that philosophy and make sure they're not using it, as I said, for a cop-out where they're, maybe not overcoming some of their own issues because they believe erroneously that other people are preventing them. So it's a catch-22 situation that you can give the tools to somebody. You can sort of lay out the general understanding and to show case studies and histories and all of these things and go into the subject in an academic way. But, I'm not responsible for how people apply it. They have to know that, wait a minute, my father may have been sort of a cruel individual, but he wasn't a psychic vampire. He was just a messed up guy who was pretty much good at heart. Or that person who's done some, kind of rotten social things, maybe they beat up people or they were in a gang. That person's a criminal, but it doesn't mean they're a psychic vampire. A psychic vampire is a very specific kind of person that's not just, a normal criminal or some person who's kind of, did some bad things in their life, who maybe went down the wrong road. Some people can be very good at heart. And some people who can appear extremely pure and extremely spiritual can be the worst kind of vampires.
Oh, so true, man. So true.
So this is an education, and it's very important to kind of find this out before they mess with you, because it can be very difficult to find out that the guru you've been following, for instance, I'm not going to give any examples here, but the point being that the priest, the beautiful lover that you've been with, or the guru you've been thinking is also wonderful and is going to give you enlightenment. You'd be shocked to find out that these people that you've invested a tremendous amount of faith in and who appear in front of you is just so bloody wonderful. Excuse my Irish, but they turn out to be these kinds of beings that we're talking about. So, it can be a shocker, and it's important to be able to test for it first, at least to test for it. Couldn't hurt, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's why it is so important to at least have a basic understanding of what it is to realize when it's happening to you, because a lot of people may not even know that they're doing it, but the ones that are truly the ones to watch out for are just the ones that you mentioned that know exactly what they're doing and are pretending to be something that they're not.
Right. Now, of course, we all need others, and we all need things from people. So the issue of psychic vampirism goes very deeply into motive. You may need something from a neighbor, or you may need help from a person. That doesn't mean that you're a psychic vampire taking their energy, because you're giving those people the choice, to not help you. Mm-hmm. And you love them anyway. It's like saying, okay, I need this person's help, but okay, I see that person's not able to help me today, or that's fine. And you basically have a humanness about you. I talk in my Atlantis books about the old alien intervention and the fact that our DNA may have an alien, component to it. It's kind of like that. I try not to cross the two subjects over too much, but the vampire, in a way, is sort of like that. There's a lack of humanness, and it comes, as you read from that quote, that these individuals, because of some primal wound, and maybe some past life stuff, I really don't like to get into that, too, because it takes you off on a whole other metaphysical tangent, and I like to keep this kind of content. This content's far out enough without getting into karmas and past lives. So, but just from a purely psychological point of view, the vampire is basically a troubled and hurt person themselves. They have a negative relationship with themselves, possibly because of a primal wound situation in their own past. And from that point, they've decided to, stop feeling. Because the pain that they suffered at that point of the primal wound was so intense that, unlike the rest of us, they chose a radical way to deal with that pain, which was to stop feeling altogether. Now, when you meet somebody like that, you might not notice that. You might not notice that they are unemotional people, because they're able to camouflage that. One of the ways that I've studied that they do that is that they tend to be extremely sensationalistic, because if you're not looking very closely, sensation and emotion can appear to be the same, but they're not the same. But you wouldn't know that unless you'd really had the ability to study it. So that they can come across as very charming and extremely sensationalistic, and because pretty much life is tough, and we like these kinds of people, and they appear on the surface to make life easy and make life a joy, and they give us a certain pep, and they seem to have a lighter, gayer energy around them. They have certain ways of making themselves very attractive in this kind of way, very untouched and unsullied. And, of course, then we feel that these are very attractive, possibly even very spiritually advanced people. And, of course, we have a natural drive, don't we, that wants to be around good, exciting, light, and very friendly people.
Yeah.
Well, how many times have you seen the fly caught in honey and it's dead?
Yeah.
Right? It had a beautiful death. That fly had an absolutely beautiful death. The only problem is it's dead.
Yeah.
So we got to, and our ancients knew this. That's why they came up with these phrases like, all that glitters is not gold, and, the problem with something that's too sweet is it would kill you. All the phraseology is because they knew that these kinds of people existed. The only problem is that we lack the shamanic tradition today to be able to cull these kinds of people and deal with them in our tribes, because we basically still are a tribal people, by the way. It's just that we don't have the shaman anymore who's going to observe the child, observe these people to see if they exist, monitor, individuals that are going through their teenage problems and maybe they've been abused, and then look to heal it. We only have doctors that are good at the patch-up. They don't want to. They just want to fix the machine. They don't really care for the psyche of people.
Yeah, the quick fix.
That's right. And unfortunately, because of this, then these kinds of psychic vampire people who've murdered their own soul, who've torn out their own emotions, they can be walking loose in the world, and there's more of them than you think.
Yeah, definitely. Now that we know a little bit about the psychic vampire, how do we protect against him?
Well, it's like in any kind of disease situation or any kind of toxic situation, even if it be just a mere problem with cleanliness in the home or, any kind of clutter, because that's what this psychic vampirism is, basically. It's an assault on your sovereignty. First of all, it's reason. It's an education into the subject, a simple understanding that the phenomena exists, and then from there you move. The key way to really discover it, if it is happening in your life, you see, or you suspect it's happening to you, is to basically be very observant of your own energy fluctuation. And, I go into this in greater length in the DVD that's going to be coming out, but again, it's all about a knowledge of the self. I think you mentioned this earlier. Nothing happens in this universe for no reason. Everything that happens to a man, including some of the worst things that can happen, like having to spend time in jail or whatever, you may curse it, you may hate it, all these adversarial and sometimes even preposterously, seemingly meaningless things that happen to us, all of the domestic minutia that just absorbs all of our energy. So, if you look at life, it just seems that there is so much chaotic stuff that, one has to handle in just the course of one life. And basically, people can start getting into pessimism and think, it's just too crazy, it's too much, I don't understand it. What we got to realize is that there's a meaning and a reason for everything that happens. So even in the case of, when you've suffered enormous violence in, say, a family situation or domestic abuse, or that you suffered prejudice outside in the world, or whatever scenario that has caused you pain and caused you suffering, it is for a reason. And one of the biggest reasons is because it's turning a man in to find out who he is. All of the different adversarial things that have happened in the world, including psychic vampirism. Because, again, psychic vampirism is just another kind of violence. It all boils down to different forms of violation on the person. And the world is full of this kind of thing. And we also do it in our own actions. So it's all about it's basically about the absence of self. The people of the world have not been addressing who and what they really are. And you can't blame a lot of them because, you see, we're conditioned from day one. If you take a beautiful stallion, but you have with a whip, and in a closed, fenced environment, you train that animal every hour, on the hour, day after day, week after week, it's going to perform. Mm-hmm. Even the wisest of animals, like the elephant, which is, known as the wisest of all animals, even the lion, which is the most ferocious of all animals, will do your silly damn tricks for you if it's trained, long enough. And the human being is no different. So from the point go, from the, intervention of parents who don't know what's going on, all the way up to the schools, and then, further on, and through the media, human beings are just pulled, literally taken away and pulled away from their own inner voice, pulled away from their own inner center, and they're living on the periphery of being. And that's a very dangerous place to be, because if you're out of touch with your own sovereignty, if you're out of touch with your own inner voice, then you are open to all the parasitical energies, and all the vampiristic energies that may exist of people who are even further from the light than you are. And then it becomes a vicious circle, because this kind of phenomena does not happen unless there is a violation somewhere.